Right now, life has us keeping our distance, but there's never been a more important time to come together. Scouting looks a little different than what we're used to, sure, but across the country, Scouts are coming together to learn, grow, and serve even while apart, because that's what Scouting has always been about. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Our culture is one of perseverance and determination. Our foundation is that of always being prepared. When you think about it, we've been preparing for times like these for over 100 years. Because for the past century, we've been pioneers, adventurers, helpers, scouts. Nothing can stop us. We've got this. We are Scouts.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Blumenberg. I serve as Scout Executive and CEO for the Sagamore Council of Boy Scouts of America. I'm so happy to have you with us tonight and would like to introduce you to our 4 expert panelists. First, we have Stephanie Long, CEO and President of North Central Health Services. She's also the Board President of the Sagamore Council. Dr. Bruce Murray, a physician at Logansport Memorial Hospital and Chair of our Council Risk Management Committee. Erica Eckelbarger, Director of Student Services at Western High School and the mom of a Cub Scout. And Brandy Christensen, President and CEO of Mental Health America Wabash Valley Chapter. We're happy you've chosen to spend some time with us this evening, and we want to make sure we can help support families throughout North Central Indiana as we work to help ensure kids are safe throughout this challenging time. We'll be monitoring the chat functions of Zoom and the comments left in Facebook, and we'll reply in our Q&A section later on after this broadcast. We know many parents are overwhelmed and may not know where to turn for support. Kids are anxious, families are struggling. We're here to help, so let's jump right in. I'd like to begin with a question for Stephanie Long first. Stephanie, you're a hospital administrator, a wife and mom with 2 teenagers. How are you balancing all these roles during this challenging time?
I know I've heard my own say multiple times, I'm ready to go back to school. You know, they're missing their friends. The interaction that they have with them now just isn't the same as being there and seeing them day to day. So we try to be understanding of that and you know, talk about this too shall pass. We just have to stick to the guidelines that have been set forward and we'll get through it.
That's great, thank you. I'm curious if you'd give us some insight as a hospital administrator and maybe translate for us in your mom hat. How do the symptoms of coronavirus differ from adults to kids? There's so much in the media about how this affected adults, but what do we as parents and leaders of youth need to be on the lookout for kids in terms of the virus?
Right. So, you know, you hear in the media all the time, a fever, high fever, respiratory symptoms, but what has been found, and fortunately for kids, they're affected a lot less than adults in terms of symptom wise. So their symptoms are much less severe, and oftentimes they have the virus and don't even know it. So that is the importance of social distancing, because you know, someone could have it and infect grandma and grandpa accidentally and have no idea that they were carrying the virus. And that's also why the latest guidance that has come out from CDC, Centers for Disease Control, suggesting that in areas that are highly effective, individuals wear a mask when they're out in public, not a healthcare mask. That's key. You know, those need to go to the frontline providers. But it's not to protect you as an individual from getting the virus, it's to protect you from spreading the virus if you're a carrier and don't know it, because that's what they're finding out. Remember, this is a novel virus, it's new, so certainly everyone is learning a lot as this has progressed. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about kids. It's unfortunate that they don't seem to be affected nearly as much as adults, and can often be a carrier and have no idea.
Great. So I guess what I'm taking from that is while kids might not have the same symptoms, they absolutely need to abide by the same social distancing regulations.
Absolutely.
So we, as a movement, the Boy Scouts of America, have halted all campouts and group gatherings in conjunction with the guidance from our national leaders and local health departments. So that's been fantastic. I've also been really excited to see so many of our local scouts and volunteers working on making homemade masks that they can share with local charities around their towns or first responders who are in need of more support. So that's really been heartwarming to see. Dr. Murray, let me switch to you real quick and just get your take. As a physician, you're closer to this probably than a lot of us are. What steps are you taking from a personal and family standpoint to make sure that your family is staying healthy and safe?
At home, we're pretty much doing the same thing that we're supposed to be doing. So social distancing, hand washing, kids, we're discussing this rather regularly that, you can't see your friends. So we're keeping them away from people. We're following our CDC guidelines. So we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing. We have one designated person that goes to the store, which is my wife. No one else goes with her. We're wearing masks out in public now if we have to go out for things. We're doing some things outside as a family. We're walking more and doing things like that. But when we go out, we're still being very careful and keeping our distance from people and just doing it amongst our family itself. From a professional standpoint at work, I'm doing the things I have to do. So frequent hand washing, social distancing, very cognizant of my actions at work and how they might affect things at home. I'm very busy at work, staying up to date with the changes that are going on. I'm a department chairman in my hospital, and I'm involved with multiple committees that are looking at this and making policy for the hospital right now and how we're dealing with this. So I think taking that information and bringing that home and utilizing that with my family is helpful also.
Great. Bruce, you have a couple of boys involved in scouting and a host of other activities. You guys are as much a family as there can be, I think. How important is it for you to keep your kids active and engaged with things outside of the house? And how are you going about doing that?
Well, I think I agree. It's very important at this point. I think as a family, we're doing more things. We have some things that we've planned later in the year. One of those being with my wife and my younger son, we're going to the National Scout Ranch to Philmont. So we have a backpacking trip that we have to prepare for. So we're getting outside, the three of us, and walking a lot. We're walking with backpacks. We adjust the times of day that we might do that, so we have a better likelihood of avoiding people. And when we're on trails, we step aside or they step aside, and we make sure that we have adequate distance separating us when we do this. At home, we're having more movie nights and kind of getting together and watching things. Our local theater on certain nights is actually making popcorn, and you can pick it up as a takeout. And again, they're using appropriate methods and bringing it to the vehicles, and everyone's being careful with social distancing. But we're trying to maintain as much normalcy and trying to enjoy ourselves as a family more. Even with our older son, we're kind of getting him out and making him do more things, or making the kids get outside and get some sun on their faces so they're not cooped up indoors, and just trying to maintain as much normalcy. From a scouting standpoint, I think encouraging units to engage through virtual troop meetings is very helpful. There are some online merit badges and virtual merit badges that are being offered now that kids can get involved with. For the adults involved in leadership, roundtables are being done virtually. So a lot of our program can still go on. We're just doing it in a different manner. My best example is, last night my youngest son sat for his Eagle Board of Review virtually. He's the first person in our district, first youth in our district to do that, and earned his Eagle Scout Award last night. So, things are still going on fairly normally, and I think it's important to try and maintain as much of that normalcy as possible.
That's great. Thanks, Dr. Murray. So, Erica, in this virtual world, your life probably got a lot busier. I would think that with e-learning, certainly a school counselor is in high demand right now. So tell me, if you would, what advice you'd give to parents to kind of help them as they prepare and deal with a lot of this, so that they can make e-learning a success at home?
Sure. I know myself, I have a third grader and his e-learning is not too intense, but I know that there are a lot of high schoolers and a lot of middle schoolers that are struggling right now. High schoolers have 7 classes typically, some of them have 6, they have a study hall, and every one of those teachers is asking them to complete e-learning on a daily basis. So that looks a lot different from my third grader who may just have a couple of reading assignments and a math assignment. So first thing I would recommend is definitely make it a routine. Make it part of your child's routine no matter what age they are. Make sure that you get it done early. I would recommend right after breakfast. So once they get breakfast, once they kind of do those morning things, brush their teeth hopefully, sit down and make sure that they tackle the e-learning early. Later in the day, they're going to be a lot less motivated. They're going to be tired, or they're going to want to get outside because that's when it's a little bit warmer. So early in the day and routine. Second piece of advice, definitely be involved. I would recommend, especially for the younger grade levels, watch the videos with them so that you understand what they're learning. I know for me personally, I had to have that refresher on quadrilaterals when my son had that video assigned to him. I had no idea. I couldn't remember anything about quadrilaterals. So I did that, and then I could help him answer some of the questions and, help him make sure that he was doing things correctly. For middle school and high school parents, definitely don't just take their word for it that they're doing their work. I have so many students right now that are struggling to get it done. And when I reach out to them and I copy their parent on the email, the parent is like, thank you so much. I had no idea. They've been telling me it's been getting done, and I had no idea that it wasn't. So parents of middle school and high schoolers definitely get involved, definitely check to make sure that they're submitting stuff on Google Classroom or whatever the platform may be. I also want to say, don't let the pandemic drown your child, especially your high school student that needs credits toward graduation. They're working on that Core 40 or an honors diploma. Don't let the pandemic put them in the hole and get them behind towards credits on graduation. That's really, really important. Other tips, I would say definitely avoid distractions. Have them work in a quiet room, away from the TV, away from video games, away from younger siblings that might be a distraction to them. They need to have a clear workspace where they can have their device and room to write with pen and pencil, or paper and pencil. And then I would definitely not recommend the couch or the bed for e-learning, because it's just going to lead them to a distraction or getting sleepy, and their mind will actually think later on, if they're doing their e-learning in bed, their mind will associate bed with work, and it will kind of subconsciously make them have trouble falling asleep. Breaks are important. After every 45 to 50 minutes, I would have your child take a break, maybe for 5 to 10 minutes, probably electronics free is a good idea for that break time. And then the last thing I had was just log into that parent portal. If your child has Skyward or PowerSchool or whatever it may be, just make sure you're logging in every few days or once a week and checking their grades to make sure that if they're telling you they're doing it, they're actually doing it, and there's not zeros or Fs or low grades in the grade book. And also be checking your email for communication from teachers, because a lot of the teachers are emailing the student and the parent. I know me as a counselor, I'm trying to copy parents as much as I can if I have email addresses for parents. So make sure that you're just checking for that correspondence from teachers, because that's super important that you get that too.
Great, thanks. I'm really excited to hear you say that there's really now more than ever a partnership between parents and teachers. Even with my third grade son, sometimes he says, no, Dad, I'm not supposed to do that. Or no, Dad, you can't talk to my teacher about this. And our teachers continue to reaffirm for us that it really is a partnership, and teachers are counting on parents to help them help their students. So I think that the potential for an education gap here is enormous if parents aren't equipped and can't step up to be able to support their learning students and make it both a satisfying experience and a rewarding experience for them in cooperation with the teacher. So thanks for that. How do you feel about keeping kids engaged in their normal activities? So kids now should be playing sports. Lots are a lot of kids are engaged with dance or 4-H or Scouts. From your perspective, how do you feel about that?
I think it's definitely important, as long as it's safe, that they do stay active in their activities as much as possible. Thankfully, the weather's been good so far this week until today. But I mean, getting outside, getting to kick around a soccer ball or shoot hoops in the driveway, or, you know, I know a lot of the parks are closed now, but yeah, staying involved in their sport, practicing at home, whatever they can do to you know, stay fresh on that. I even saw a friend on Facebook that had her son doing virtual soccer practice in the house, and the coach was on the Zoom looking at the kids with their footwork and their drills. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, I think that's definitely important. I also think that staying involved with scouting has been helpful. My own son, who's in 3rd grade, he's a bear. We kind of looked through the manual together, and he chose a cooking adventure and a fishing adventure. So he's been helping me cook at home, which has been awesome. He wants to learn. It's been fun. And we have a Zoom scheduled with our den on Friday, well, tomorrow, that I'm really excited about, because he'll get to see all of his buddies from the den.
Great. I think that's been super important. I noticed that with my kids, they really light up when they get the chance to see their friends and connect with their friends, even if it's in a virtual setting. And so I would just encourage all those who are watching tonight to consider those options, whether it's Zoom or FaceTime or another virtual platform. Our kids are social beings, and they need that interaction. And for most of them, they just walked away from all of their colleagues, just like we did. They're working from home, and they're missing that personal interaction. So it's great to encourage that. Erica, one more thing I wouldn't mind if you just highlight for me. You know, kids have a lot of structure, and in our house, at least, it seems like if it's not structured school time, then it's structured video time. What would you encourage for parents if you had to say, you know, your kids need to spend X amount of time a day just using their imagination or running around in the yard or having that unstructured time? What would that be?
So I think something that kind of ties into that I want to mention first is very early on in this pandemic, I saw some moms that had posted things on social media, like a COVID-19 family daily schedule. So I think in your family schedule, whatever that looks like for you, incorporate some designated time for the screen, and depending on the ages of the kids, maybe that looks like only an hour if they're really little. Maybe it looks like 2 hours. Maybe for the teenagers, it's more like 3 hours of unstructured time. I think the less the better. We're kind of extreme in my house, and our kids don't have video games, so we don't have to worry about that. But my 3rd grader loves YouTube, and I constantly have to tell him, hey, you've been on YouTube long enough. Let's get outside. Let's do something more creative. Let's draw. Let's read. But I mean, I think for most elementary school kids, a couple hours a day of kind of unstructured screen time is okay. I would build that into the schedule for your family, and not let it just be 15 minutes here and 30 minutes here, and then you kind of lose track of how long they've truly been on the screen. I think quiet activities and quiet time built into their day is good too. Time to get creative, time to draw, play with Play-Doh, do things that are kind of therapeutic. I think that's a lot healthier than being on the screen. And obviously getting outside whenever they can get outside, that is so important. I think we were outside for like 6 hours yesterday because it was so beautiful, and we were all so much happier and in a better place mentally after being outside. So I do think that's important. Family movie nights are another thing that's kind of cool. It is more time on the screen, but it's together, and you can choose movies that are appropriate for their age. And then sometimes those movies can spark healthy conversation about themes and things like that. So I think family movie time is great. Another thing I thought of earlier was keeping TV and devices out of kids' bedrooms. That's another extreme thought, I know, but if your kids are little and you have the ability to say, hey, you're not going to have video games or TV or you know, devices in your room, I think that's really healthy to be able to limit that.
Great, thanks. The one of the things I'm super proud of the Boy Scouts of America, we have some incredible opportunities for kids. And You talked about your son's experience in the Bear Book and some of the adventures that he's working on. One of the things I appreciate is the CyberChip program. So the CyberChip program is a training for scouts, but it's available for all kids that just helps them understand and recognize what's appropriate behavior online and what's inappropriate behavior online. It also helps them develop some healthy habits to learn what they should and shouldn't share online, what red flags look like in a virtual world, and essentially how to keep themselves safe in that environment. So that is, it's a Boy Scout program, but it's available to anyone. We'll link to that resource on our website, sagamorebsa.org, for any families that are watching that are interested in another resource to help support families. So the other really great piece is that the Boy Scouts of America have made a year's worth of Boys Life magazine free through our downloadable app. And the magazine's filled with comics and stories that are age appropriate and very G-rated. There's games, there's jokes. My favorite is Scouts in Action. They highlight 3 or 4 scouts every issue who have performed heroic acts or saved a life. And so it's just a great resource for families and for kids. So I'd encourage all those watching. You can download it through the App Store or Google Play. It's called Boys Life Magazine, and it is for boys and girls of all ages. Eric, last question kind of on electronics. What do you think parents should be doing to, or do you think parents should be looking at what their kids are engaged with in an online sense in a different manner now than they would have, say, a month ago?
Yeah, I think that's definitely important. You hear a lot about limiting your kids' exposure to the news, especially about the pandemic. But I think there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of bad people in the world, unfortunately, that want to put things out there that that scare kids or that are inappropriate. There's people that know that kids are on the screen a lot more now, and parents are busy and distracted. So I think it's super important that we monitor it even more than usual. A lot of kids are now, young kids are now on social media and TikTok and Snapchat and things like that. And a lot of times they don't know at a younger age how dangerous those things can be, and that there are people that would try to prey on them through apps that seem kind of fun or something that everybody has. I've also noticed that on YouTube, there's a lot of like inappropriate content that can kind of sneak up on you on the suggested videos. So I've had to really monitor my own son's YouTube usage and try to kind of put some of the parental locks on there, because you just never know what they can get into.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brandy, I'd like to kind of turn the conversation your direction a little bit. Certainly, everybody's under more stress now, and it's just people are a little bit more anxious. There's more anxiety in the world than typically. How do you feel about kids and their engagement with violent or aggressive video games? Is that something we should be always limiting or limiting more now? And kind of give us, if you would, a recommendation from a mental health standpoint in that regard.
Sure. Yeah, everyone is experiencing anxiety more, and it is more in our face. As far as violent video games and movies and other media content, you can find studies to support violence in games and movies like that can lead to higher proclivity towards aggression. Research doesn't really bear out any direct correlation. I think at all times we need to use common sense. Explicit graphic content is probably not appropriate for a 12-year-old, for example. Best practice, just allowing them, as you spoke earlier, use those developmentally appropriate games, focus more on strategy games, service to others, engaging the mind, Screen time can become like a substitute parent. And I think it's important that as we're limiting, and good parenting is aggressive monitoring, right? Like you're talking about the parental controls. I don't think that's a COVID specific topic. I think that that's appropriate all the time. I think it's important to discuss with the child why we're having these boundaries and what's the intent behind that. You can be honest and age appropriate with kids, and they'll understand that. The more increase in screen time that we have, the more neglect and the other focuses like schoolwork, which they need to be so diligent about right now, as Erica was saying. And screen time, video games in particular, they can become an avoidance factor for the other more healthy manifestations of brain development in children. So engaging the mind, learning something new, things like that, getting outside. But it's really a parenting choice. At the end of the day, the age appropriate, limiting screen time, but seriously monitoring the making sure that the kids are not exposed to those graphic content.
Great, thanks. I can feel in myself the increase in stress and tension and anxiety, and I can recognize it in my spouse, right? That's easy. We've been married long enough that I understand those cues, but I'm not 100% sure that I recognize anxiety when I see it in my kids. Help me understand what I need to be on the lookout to know that my kids are dealing with this in a healthy way, or to know if they're not and what I should do.
Sure. Kids, and much like adults, we experience anxiety in a very physical way. So if you have a child that has frequent headaches or a lot of gastrointestinal problems, just like adults, that can be attributed to anxiety. We experience that, physically as well as a parent. You can look for behavioral signs of anxiety, like avoidance of situations, obsessive or compulsive behavior, just distress in general. And, perhaps they're more clingy, or, you can look for extremes, disruptions in sleeping patterns, appetite, but often it will manifest physically first with no other symptoms. A lot of children that are experiencing anxiety, they might be a little bit more clingy, or just hanging around over your shoulder more than normal, or they might be isolating. So another indication, they could be going back to behaviors that were present at a younger age for them. So you know your child best when you see changes in behavior like that. That's a good time to have a conversation.
Great. For kids who are already struggling a little bit in this area, are there recommendations that parents can take just to keep them from spiraling in getting even more worked up and stressed out and anxious?
Yes, and in fact, a lot of the content that has already been shared is applicable. Everybody, kids, parents, coworkers, everybody requires a little bit more grace and flexibility right now. This is the new normal. As you pointed out, we're all working from home, and it's different. So it's very important to stick to those routines. It doesn't have to be totally rigid, but making sure that you're still getting up and getting dressed. You're not just lounging around in pajamas. Getting out and getting that fresh air, making time for it. You know, we recommend that parents spend 20 minutes per child individually, just talking to them, just touching base with them. You can talk to them, have honest, authentic conversations about the reality the uncertainty, and being age appropriate, of course. We can address a lot of these questions. There are supports out there should your child require additional support. We still have our Navigator program at Mental Health America. You can make an appointment, come in and have a phone appointment at this time. We can still connect people to telehealth, which is actually bearing really good results with younger folks. But just in terms of preventative stuff, just turning off the news, unplugging, obviously modeling the behaviors that you would like to project for them, model that mindfulness, or having a safe place for them to unwind, that they can go to and be left alone. But just all of the other things that we were talking about, making sure that everybody has access to information. What can I control? Because that's what really anxiety comes down to, is a feeling of a loss of control. And if you can take one little piece of their world and give them control over that, that's going to go a long way as well.
Great, that's fantastic. I'm almost embarrassed to say, but as I think back over the last week, I think I'd be hard pressed to guarantee that every day I spend 20 minutes undivided with each of my kids. And I think as a parent, that's something we could all certainly strive to do a better job with, in just committing that time, right? Especially now when we have it. We're all under the same roof all day long. It should be easier, but it's something that we have to be diligent about and have to commit to as well. And I love what you said about giving them control over that. So I think my takeaway from this will be, I'll give my kids the opportunity to schedule my 20 minutes and tell me when they need it to be and what they want it to be, and just devote that time to them. So thank you for that. I certainly appreciate it. I know, Brandy, that from some research I've done, your organization, Mental Health America, offers some mental first aid training. So we're familiar with the Boy Scouts of America in first aid. We're good at it. We have a merit badge for it. Everybody learns about it. But we don't have anything regarding mental health first aid. Curious what you can tell me about that.
Yes, I'm glad you asked. Mental health first aid is a layman's course. It's an 8.5-hour course, and it teaches the basics in what mental health is. It explores some common diagnosis, and we teach signs and symptoms of developing mental health disorders. We explain what a mental health disorder is. More than 2 weeks of feeling, of having your life disrupted because of your because of the symptoms that you're facing, whether it's depression or anxiety. There are some mood disorders. We discuss prevalence, and then we teach an action plan. We teach individuals how to respond to an individual in crisis, how to offer that immediate support. We offer people an action plan, very similar to regular first aid. And then how to connect individuals to professionals, qualified professionals, when it becomes clear that some additional help is needed. We really enjoy providing this to our community. We do have a youth mental health first aid that's specific for educators, and very, very appropriate for scout leaders, youth pastors, coaches, things like that, to really teach individuals who are in immediate contact with young individuals just how to respond to a youth who may be experiencing a mental health crisis. We know that early intervention, the same as any other disease, is the key to a full recovery. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Erica, if I can circle back to you, I just want to get from your perspective. So you're, as a high school counselor, I would imagine kids come to you with all kinds of different challenges, and help our audience get a better sense of what their responsibilities are and what some appropriate action steps are if a neighbor or their own child or a scout that they work with or a youth they work with in another group comes to them or doesn't come to them, and they just have a concern that that youth is either in an unsafe environment or in an abusive environment at home. What should they do?
Sure. The first thing that we always do at the high school, at any of the schools, and what we recommend to parents is that they directly call Indiana Child Protective Services. And the number is pretty easy to remember, but you can always Google it and it pops right up. So it's 1-800-800-5556. So that's what we do at the high school. We are mandated reporters. Lay people are not necessarily mandated reporters. It kind of depends on your job, but you can always call that number. It's toll free, and they staff it. I believe they staff it 24 hours a day. So that's what I would recommend, is that someone that is concerned about the well-being of a child make that call themselves. Now, if they're not comfortable with that, if that seems a little bit intimidating or scary, then reach out to your child's counselor. That would be the next place I would recommend. You know, a call or an email. I think we're all kind of operating primarily with email right now, but you can schedule a phone call, you can schedule a Zoom, but contact your child's counselor, the school counselor, and we can make that call based on a report that we get from a parent or a concerned person.
Great, thank you. The one of our requirements as for all of our leaders in the Boy Scouts of America is that we're all mandated reporters, and so any of our volunteers that suspect that are required on our behalf to report. We also offer a couple of unique programs. We offer a mandated youth protection training for all adults that includes some of the items that we talked about tonight. That, as well as another free resource of the Boy Scouts of America. Any adult or any youth organization can take advantage of that. It's a little over an hour's worth of online learning to help adults learn how to keep kids safe, and it's targeted towards the practices that we put in place and that we require of our leaders, but it can be used in any youth organization or in any setting for youth. That, again, that's free. Any adult can access that through my.scouting.org, and it's big and bold right there in the top right-hand corner of the website, titled Youth Protection Training. We also have available, and we've partnered with the Barbara Sinatra Children's Foundation for some youth protection training called Protect Yourself Adventures. And we've made these available throughout the community for anybody that might have need for them. It's a resource for all kids that some age-appropriate videos that help them understand how to create safe boundaries, what's an acceptable and an unacceptable touch, to develop a list of adults that they can go to if they find themselves in an unsafe situation. And so, again, that's available, and we'll make that link to that on our website after this as well. Stephanie, I want to circle back to you. So you're chairman and president of the council's executive board, and certainly a mom, and you have active kids. What would you tell parents parents of scouts who may be concerned right now about their kids attending programs this summer?
Well, I would first say, know that the council executive board and the BSA place a very high level of safety and well-being of all participants at the highest level. We'll consult with state and local leaders as well as BSA National to ensure it's safe to open our camps. Our professional staff, camp leadership, and volunteer board will ensure that the camps are safe, have plans and procedures to limit any potential exposure, and have the resources to ensure scouts, leaders, and the staff are safe and have an amazing experience. I think, you know, if there's one of the positives perhaps that has come out of this is that there is information being shared, very legitimate information, easy to access. So you know, that'll play a big role in determining when it's safe to open the camps.
Great, thanks. So, Dr. Murray, in addition to your full-time job, you serve as a volunteer on the Council's Executive Board and chair our Risk Management Committee. You want to give our audience tonight just a sense of the steps we're taking to make sure that camps and programs are safe for kids?
You know, currently and this is true not only within our council, but in every council, within every state, within every part of the country, each of our camps operate under the licensure of the state that they reside in. We are required to follow both local and state regulations set up by the health departments of those municipalities and by the states themselves. The BSA itself actually has a national camp accreditation program, which has its own set of guidelines. So there are a lot of checks and balances that are in place that assure us that we're running a good and safe camp for people. Going forward, from a risk management standpoint, we're going to be continually looking at our own current medical procedures within our camps. We're going to be looking at how we manage sanitation, food handling, as we continue to plan for summer camps and beyond, because unfortunately we are in a new normal now, and we're going to have to reevaluate how we manage some of this stuff going forward into the future. I've had the good fortune of being involved in many things within scouting, both locally and more at a national level. I've attended a national jamboree, a world jamboree. I've had the good opportunity of teaching at one of the high adventure bases. And I have every assurance by what I've seen in the way that the BSA approaches this is going to be for the benefit of the youth and the adults that are volunteering within it to keep them safe.
Great, thanks. Hey, I want to, I guess, take advantage of your profession here too, Dr. Murray, and just ask, from your professional opinion, if you had to write a prescription right now for all of the families that are listening to promote well-being and keep them safe, what would your official doctor's orders be for us?
I mean, I think having a good bit of very positive structure, you know, a good balance of activities, make sure kids are getting some time outdoors, they're getting a good bit of family time, you know, some way, finding a way for them to have not physical contact, but contact with their friends in some ways, make sure they're eating well, make sure they're getting plenty of sleep. I think having schools back doing virtual learning and with e-learning is helping to recreate some of that structure as well. But I think a lot of it just is keeping that good, healthy, and very positive structure so that the kids can return to a normal sense of life.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's certainly great advice. Hey, so that brings us to the end of our questions tonight, and we were actually able to tackle all of the tough questions that came in via the Zoom chat throughout the conversation. So great job. I'd like to thank each of our panelists for spending some time with us on a Thursday evening. It's certainly great to have experts who are willing to share their expertise and a little bit of their time to help us keep kids throughout North Central Indiana healthy, safe, and well. It is now more than ever. It's our priority as leaders amongst the youth service organizations to make sure that we're equipping parents and equipping volunteers with all the resources they need to keep kids safe across all spectrums, whether it's physically safe, mentally safe, to make sure we're providing healthy programs for them to help build them up to be the types of citizens that we need in our future and be very productive and live healthy lives. And so certainly thank all of you for joining us and providing your time. Thanks for all of those that joined us via Zoom. We will be casting this live to Facebook as well. And we'll provide resources from each of our panelists, as well as some links to some free resources from the Boy Scouts of America on our website tonight at www.sagamorebsa.org. Well, thank you all very much. Good night and good scouting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.